Hello everyone, welcome back to Vintage Speedworks. My name is Marco. Today I am working on my Honda CB400T. I wanted to show you the process. I'm about to build a bracket to hold the drum brake in place in the front wheel. Now this bike doesn't originally have a drum brake. However, I installed one from a Honda Elsinore 250. So today we're going to build something to hold it in place in these forks. Right now, I have a bolt going through the forks where the brake caliper used to be on a disc brake. However, I'm not using that anymore. So today, I'm gonna show you guys how you can build the bracket. And well, I've never done it before, so we're all gonna learn together. So here we go. You can see here, this is the brake drum that's on the front of my bike. Now, it's not from this bike. This is a front wheel and brake setup from a Honda Elsinore 250. And so this wasn't originally on here. Now, as you can see, these brackets here, this is where the actual fork stops, I guess you can call them. The Elsinore has, I'll throw a picture up on the screen here, but the Elsinore has two little brackets here that will keep the brake from actually, or the brake drum from actually rotating in the wheel. So the drum is actually supposed to be attached to the fork. So when you press on the brake, it'll actually cause the wheel to stop. The way I've done it is I've used the bolt on the other side to kind of just hold it in place. However, there is a little bit of movement that is caused by that. Well, I want to make sure I can fix that. So what I want to do is I want to build a bracket that goes in here, but that attaches somehow either to the brake drum or to the fork itself. So let me give you a better shot of what it currently looks like right now so that you can see how this bolt is working. Okay, so I hope that you can see this better. So this is the bolt that I installed on the bike. This is where the brake caliper used to go. This bolt goes through, and the nut that's on that bolt is what's actually keeping the brake drum from moving all the way around, basically. So this bolt acts like a stop. I'll show you when I take it off. I'll show you in a close-up how that looks. But this bolt was actually hitting the aluminum part here, and it's causing it to wear out. So what we want to do is we want to find a way to get this brake drum to stay in place utilizing these little brackets here that it had on the original bike. So what I want to do is I want to design something that can accomplish that. What I think I can do is I think I can build a bracket that has two bolts that run through here, and that way the bracket itself will be attached to the drum and it'll keep from rotating within this fork. Now I'm going to use some scrap metal that I have laying around. I'm going to use some tools here like my micrometer to measure the wheel, because I'm going to use a program called Illustrator. Illustrator basically a design software, but what it allows you to do is it allows you to put in the measurements that you get so that we can build a template for the bracket that I'm going to build. Now I'm going to take some measurements now, and we'll see how that works. That way we can input it into the computer. We can see how that's gonna work, and hopefully we can get a good outcome from this. Now, I really don't know where I'm going to go with this. It could go various ways, but I'm gonna try my best and see where it takes us. The initial idea was to use these two bolts and some sort of bracket to kind of hold it onto the brake drum like everybody does. But in this case, I think it might be easier to build a bracket in here that's attached to the brake drum and has a bolt through the inside, and that way it can stay within the area that the forks have there. So let's try it out and see how that works, and we'll go from there. So let's take the measurements first. What I want to do is I want to take some rough measurements. Now these rough measurements is what I'll use to be able to transfer the information over to the computer program that we'll be using, but that'll allow me to be able to figure out the bracket that goes here. Now I know I need to take the axle off, and I need to make sure that I can see what's inside of the brake drum to find out if I'm gonna be able to drill anything in here. However, before I do that, I wanna take some rough measurements so that I can start designing, I can start figuring out what I'm gonna use here so that I know that I'll know if it's even possible. So the first thing I want to do is I want to measure the diameter of this fork. So to do that, I'm going to take my caliper. I'm simply going to put it on the round side here. Now I'll hold it in a way that it gives me a better measurement. As you can see there, I have some brackets here, so I want to make sure that I can figure out the actual diameter of this. So I have a round side here, so I'm going to use this round side. Just kind of take it around. I'm getting 46.80 millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a circle that's going to represent the diameter of these forks. So that's going to be 46.80 millimeters. Okay, so I know what the circumference of this is, or the diameter of this is. And so now what I want to do is I want to figure out how far this wall is away from this end here. Now to do that, I'm going to do it a little bit differently. I'm just going to zero this out again. I'm going to try and take this measurement with the caliper, touching the inside of this, of the drum brake, and then I'm going to try to take it by putting a flat edge on this end, which, let me get that right now. Now I'm just gonna use this piece of square tubing. It's not gonna be perfect, obviously. I just want to use it as a way to get the measurement from the inside part of this brake drum all the way out to the fork. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my caliper in here. I'm going to make sure that it touches. Now this caliper has the inside diameter, or the inside measurement, and then the outside measurement. So I'm going to use the outside measurement for this. So I'm going to use this one and this one. So I'm going to place my square tubing here. I'm going to get it to the inside of the brake drum, and then I'm going to get it to more or less the inside. I just want to kind of eyeball it and make sure it's kind of squared over here. So I'm getting 51 millimeters exactly. So now I'm going to draw the back plate of my brake drum, and I know that from here all the way back to the end here I have 51 millimeters. So it'll all make sense once I start putting it into the computer. But yeah, so that's the measurement that we have. Now, another measurement that I want to get is the inside portion of this caliper. So I want to measure to see how wide this portion is here. So it's going to be kind of hard for y'all to see, but I'm going to take my caliper and I'm going to put it in here so that I can measure the inside. So I can measure how wide that gap is on the brake drum. Okay, so I want to be kind of exact. So that is 41.88. So in the gap between the forks, I have 41.88. Okay. Okay, so now I know the width here. And now if I want to build a bracket here, I also need to figure out the depth from the axle all the way to the top. So I'm just going to take a quick measurement. Now I want my bracket not to go all the way to the axle. So I want my bracket just to sit around here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure more or less this height right here, and I'm gonna call that a height of 53 millimeters. Okay. Now again, I could build something that attaches here and then to the actual brake drum. However, I feel like if we build something that goes in here and it's attached to the inside of the brake drum, of course we still need to take it out and see if it will actually fit in there. But I feel like if I put something that's attached to the actual brake drum in there and that it wedges around this area here, around the area of the fork, then that'll allow it to just be on its own without the need to have to bolt anything up to here or anything of the sort. Might even be able to cut these off and give it a cleaner look. Let's go ahead and take our measurements over to our design program so I can show you how that's gonna look, so we can start building the brackets that we need to build and so that we can start working on this. Oh, before I go, I'm gonna show you the type of material that I'm gonna be using to build that bracket. It's gonna be a small bracket, however, it's gonna have some bolts that go inside of it, and I'm gonna build it out of 1/4 inch metal. Yeah, and it's just stuff that I have laying around. So I'm gonna show you that now. Okay, so here we have the piece of metal that we're gonna use. Now, this is, I believe, 1/8 inch metal. So I'm gonna be smart when I use this, and I'm gonna use the edges, the straight edges on the side. So depending on the width of this, I might be able to build the bracket by using this sides and then doing like a half moon shape that will go around the fork. But let's design it first and let's see how it works. All right, so I set you guys up as best as I could over here on this tripod, because I want to show you what I'm going to do in this program to kind of design our bracket. Now, our bracket is going to be designed in a way that we can print it out on a piece of paper. And so once we print it out on a piece of paper, we'll be able to cut the template, put it onto our metal, use maybe some spray adhesive or something like that. We can spray it onto the metal, and then once we spray it onto the metal, or once we paste it onto the metal, then we can cut that metal out. So let's start designing. So the first thing I want to do here is I want to open up Illustrator. Now, I use Illustrator for this stuff, but you can probably do it by just getting some quick measurements. This is a lot easier for me, so I use it for other design stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose a letter size template, and what will happen is that I'll get a letter size artboard so that we can start designing this. Okay, so now that we have our artboard, the first thing I want to do is I want to draw the circle for our fork. Now, the way I'm going to design this is I'm going to design this as if we were looking from the top down to our brake caliper, right? Or our drum caliper or drum brake. So what I'm going to draw first, I'm going to imagine this as if I was looking from the top down. And so the first thing I want to draw is a circle representing our fork. So I'm going to click on this and I'm going to say that this is 46.80 millimeters. So it converts it over to inches, which is fine. 4680 millimeters. And then now we have a circle that will represent our fork. Now, so that you guys can better see it, I'm gonna actually go in here and I'm going to write the words fork. Or yeah, I'll just fork tube, I should put. Okay, so now we have that. Now we're going to come back and we're going to make a representation of our caliper. If we were to looking at our brake drum actually from the top down. So as you can see, if I was looking at the rim or the wheel, then my wheel would actually, if I was looking at the wheel from the top, that would be my wheel. And then this would be my brake drum. Now what we want to do is we want to build a bracket, and I'm just going to roughly draw it out here, a bracket that will look like this. Something along the lines of that. Something like this. I'll fix that later. But it'll basically look something like this. And I'm going to put that in color red. So this is the bracket that we want to build. Now it has to go long ways. So it has to be going from the bottom up. So the bracket is going to be, I know we wrote it down, it's going to have a height of about 53 millimeters. But we're not too worried about the height at this point. What I do want to do is I want to get the other measurements correct. Now, before let's just delete that. Now, the measurement that we had from the inside of the brake caliper to the outside of this tube was 51 millimeters. So I'm gonna do 51 millimeters, and I'm just gonna, actually I'm gonna give it a height of 51 millimeters. And I'm gonna do a width of about, let's say 1 inch. So now I gave it a width of 1 inch. Let's just make that smaller. But now we can actually see that from here to here, that is actually my 51 millimeters. So now I know that I need to move my fork tube to match up with this edge right here. So once I get it lined up here, let's see, looks about right. Now what I can do is I can just draw a square here, and that way I can get my fork tube. Let's say that is pink. Now that way I can get my fork tube very close to the edge here. Let's zoom in a little bit more, there we go. Okay, so now that we have the fork tube on the edge of this, that's the measurement that we had from the brake drum all the way to the outer of the fork tube. So this one was 51 millimeters. Okay, so now I can get rid of this one. So now I know that this is the width that I'm working with. Now, we did mention that the gap between the two brackets on the drum brake, that one measures 41.88 millimeters. So I'm going to draw one that has a width of, I'm going to draw a rectangle that has a width of 41.88 by a height of, let's just say 0.5. That's too tall. I'm sorry. So we're gonna do that again. That was inches. So I'm gonna draw a rectangle that has a width of 41.88 millimeters, and then we're going to do 0.5. Okay. So the width that we just drew here is what we need. Now I need to figure out that there's the center of this fork tube. As you can see, there's a red dot right there. So what I'll do is I'll be able to center this dot with this dot here so that we can see, so that we can get our center right here. Now that we have the center, now that this is centered to our fork tube, then we know that this is the gap in between those two little brackets on that drum brake. So we can get rid of this one because we already got the right measurement here. So now we know that that's where our brackets lie, right there on the brake drum. Those are the existing brackets that it comes with. So we're gonna draw two little tabs there just to represent that. Now that we have that, now as you can see, now we actually have the gap here that we're going to utilize. Now, the reason I like Illustrator is because you can do pretty cool things. For example, you can draw a square or a rectangle that goes all the way to where you need it to go so that you can get your point right here. You can lock that, and then you can come back and you can add an anchor here, right there. And then you can do the same for the other side. So we're just gonna copy this bracket. We're gonna put it on this side. And just like that. And now we have an area here where we can draw another anchor, but not on this one if we wanna draw it on the circle. So we have another anchor right there. Okay, so now we can get rid of these rectangles that we just used for mock-up, but now we have anchors here. You can see that we have an anchor there. And what's cool about that is that now we can actually go in here and modify this. So we don't want to move that. So we can, for example, use our, well, we won't do that. We'll first try to draw it out. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to draw something that goes here, all the way here, and then there. So what we could do is we can just come here, start drawing from here to there, and then we can try to get that angle just perfect. We can use this tool. So now we know that our anchor is there. So we can draw this line perfectly here with our pen tool, and then we'll know it'll match exactly with that one and that one. Okay, so now we can paint this bracket that we just built with painted blue. We'll color it in blue. So this is the bracket that we're trying to get. And now if you can imagine this, what I'm thinking of doing is that this will be the bracket that goes on the top, and there will be a second one that goes on the bottom. So these two brackets are going to be attached to another piece of metal that's going to go in the middle, which is going to be the height of 53 millimeters. But these are the main ones that we want to cut out. But for now, these are the brackets that we're going to build. I can always adjust the height of the bracket afterwards if I see that it doesn't fit or I need it to be longer or shorter. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and print these out, and we'll go from there. Hopefully we can cut this. Now we're gonna cut it using like a grinder. We're gonna cut it using some tools that we have laying here at home, but hopefully we can get it close enough so that we can keep that brake drum from actually turning. So yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and print this out now, and our next step would be to check it on the bike first, and then from there we can go ahead and try cutting it on the piece of metal. All right, everyone, it's the next day. I apologize if you guys hear some noise. My neighbors are doing yard work and stuff out there, but it's the next day, and I thought about how we can go about building a bracket. I had to think about it all night because I wasn't too sure about how we can get that bracket to be exact, since it had that round shape. So after printing out the bracket of the design of the bracket, I was able to think that using a hole saw would probably be a good idea to use so that we can get that perfect half circle shape. So let me show you what I did. I went ahead and figured out or realized that a 1 3/4 hole saw would be perfect and will give us that perfect shape so that we can build that bracket. So let me show you what I have here. Okay, so as you can see here, this is the hole saw that I bought. I had some other hole saws that I used before, but they weren't the specific size that I needed. As you can tell, this is a 1 3/4 44 millimeter hole saw. 44 millimeter is actually the perfect size that will fit into our template. Now, I went ahead and used my template that I cut out one of these little small templates, and as you can see, hopefully I can show you here in the camera, this actually fits perfect right there. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna drill a hole, and on a piece of metal, I'm gonna drill it twice, and I'm gonna make 2 of these brackets by tracing this out on the bracket first, and then making the hole saw or the hole that will line up directly with that, and that way we can have that perfect half moon shape that we're looking for the bracket. Now, in order to do that, I have to make sure that when I align both pieces of metal that I'm about to cut, that I do it in a way that is going to align perfectly. So that way, if I make the hole on one piece of metal, then it transfers over to the next one. So that way I have both lined up perfectly. So when I'm doing all the cutting, when I'm doing all the shapes, that I can do that perfectly. So I'm gonna start by cutting 2 pieces of metal, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm going to weld them together. I'll show you how I'm gonna do that here soon, but I'm gonna weld them together. That way I can ensure that they're not gonna move, and that way when I make the hole, I can make 2 holes straight through the bracket, so I can have 2 brackets. So let me show you that next. All right, so I got my 2 pieces of metal cut, and as you can see, I left a little piece overlapping on both sides. They're not straight cuts, we don't need them to be straight cuts, but I left a little piece. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make sure that they are flat on the end that we need it to be flat, which is going to be this side. As long as this side is flat, then we're good. Then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna measure from here to the inside so I know exactly where my drill bit needs to land here so that we can come back and drill that hole all the way through. Now we don't need this whole piece of metal. The reason I cut it so big is because I wanna clamp it onto my drill press so that I can make that cut. All right, so now that I have those 2 pieces of metal together, I'm gonna weld them. And I'm gonna go ahead and after that measure my hole saw. I need to get the thickness of the hole saw also added to the thickness of the bracket that we designed. And then on top of that, that way I know how much in I have to go, have to center punch it or make my hole punch so that I know where the drill bit needs to sit on the drill press, and that way we can drill it right in the place that we want to. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. So yeah, let's go. Fire check, no fires. I probably shouldn't have welded next to that piece of bracket that I have there. So we went ahead and tacked our pieces of metal together. That way we can hole press or make holes in them with our drill press. So we'll be doing that now. Keep in mind these tacks were only to hold the bracket in place, and that way we know exactly where we need to make the holes. So let's go to the bench and let's measure where the holes need to go exactly. We have a bracket, as you can see, I just tack welded it on both sides. This is still hot, so but the main thing is that these 2 surfaces right here they're going to be straight. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take the measurement. I'm going to measure the thickness of this middle piece right here, and this is just roughly get the measurement. Should probably zero this out first. So I'm going to take the measurement from the middle of this bracket, which gives me roughly 4.75. Yeah, about 4.70. Okay, so I'm going to take 4.70. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to now measure our drill bit. Now from the middle here, because I wanna make sure I get the center point of this drill bit. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to measure from the center to the outer portion of this drill bit, or hole saw. So I'm gonna remove the drill bit part. I'm gonna remove that, and I'm going to measure the diameter of this. So I'm getting about 4270 here. So I'm going to take 4270. Where's my calculator? So I'm going to take 4270 and 470, which is the width of this. Well, actually 4270, I need to divide that first. So I'm gonna take 4270 divided by 2 is 2135. So 2135, it would be my center point. 2135 would be the center point from here to here. So I know that that's the center point. So 2135, now I'm going to add the width of one of these brackets, which I only made a bunch of brackets because I was going to use them to put them on the metal in case I needed more. But basically I'm just getting the width of this bracket. So 2135 plus the 470, that gives me 2605. So what I'm going to do is now I am going to pick a part here on my metal, and I'm going to measure 26. I'm gonna zero this out first, and I'm gonna measure 26.05. All right, so once we have 26.05 locked in, as you can see, 26, hopefully you can see that on camera, it's 26.05. Now we can come back and measure it from here to the middle. And in theory, that should give us how much space we need. So I'm gonna try to mark this with just a regular pen. Hopefully I can get a small mark in there. Okay, seem to, yep, got it there. All right, and now I'm gonna come back. Now that I have my mark, I can come back with just a punch. I have this one just kind of rusting away somewhere, but they're still good, so you can get your points to start your drill bits off. And just use it on the middle, and then you're just gonna tap it. All right, it might be small, but you can see that's where our drill bit needs to start. So now if we come back and we add our drill bit, if it gets started right there, then we know that we have the right amount of distance from the edge, which we need. That's where my drill bit's gonna start. And then that is the edge that I need. So it'll be perfect right where we need it. All right, so what I'm gonna do is before we get started is I have my hole saw already set up. I'm gonna try to do this so that you guys can see, but hopefully you can kind of see what's going on here. I'm gonna make sure that the hole or the little divot that was made by that punch, that I line it up straight with my drill bit. I'm gonna just use a little bit of oil just to get my hole started. And I'm gonna apply a little bit of oil to where I know that the drill or the hole saw is going to hit. All right, here we go. Too much oil. Okay, so as you can see, we went through the first drill bit, or through the first piece of metal. So now we're gonna go ahead and try to remove, let's see here. All right, so as you can see, we're gonna kind of move some of these shavings out of the way without making a huge mess. But as you can see, we have this first part down, and I think we even got across to the second side. Yep. All right, so we actually went through both pieces of metal, and let me go ahead and lower this. So now we have this piece out. I'm not gonna touch that because it might be a little hot. And then we have our second piece down here. Earlier I had mentioned that I was gonna make 2 holes, but I realized that in this situation, we actually only need 1 because we're making 2 brackets. Only 2 brackets, so I'm gonna get the 2 brackets from this piece right here. So that should be fine. So yeah, so now that we made the 2 holes, then I can remove this and we can start cleaning it up to cut the other parts off, and then we'll go from there. All right, so we have some spray adhesive, but I did have oil on here, so I'm just gonna use some acetone here. To kind of remove all the grease. Or try to at least remove some of this grease here. Okay, and then I'm just gonna spray some, it's just cheapy spray adhesive. Oh no, that's terrible. What the? Oh my god, that is, that's not even spray adhesive anymore. What is this? Well, that's not gonna work. Did that get even tacky at all? Maybe we just kind of rub it here. Nope, that spray adhesive is no good. All right, that's fine. So I'm just gonna place the piece that we were gonna cut here. I'm gonna mark it, and that way we know how to cut it with our reciprocating saw, or actually with our chop off wheel or cut off wheel. So yeah, let me just mark it first, and then I'll show you. Now that I have both brackets made, now I can actually go into making the bottom piece, which I'm gonna weld to. Now, I'll try to show you here on screen how I'm going to do that, because I'm gonna bevel the edges of the metal so that I can come back. I can square them off, but at the same time, I'm going to go ahead and bevel them so that I can get a good clean weld in between. That way the pieces don't move, they stay together, but I can make sure that there's enough penetration from the weld there, so that way that it doesn't move. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that now. It's hard to show you on camera, but let me see if I can get these pieces. They're still kind of hot, but these are the pieces that I made. I still gotta clean them up a bit, kind of dull the edges, but these are the pieces that are gonna go I'm gonna bevel the edges, one side of them where I'm gonna weld, where I know I'm gonna weld. And that way, when I go to welding them, I know that that's the part that I need to weld. Now, the other part of metal, the other piece of metal that's gonna go attached to the brake drum, I know this might not make sense at this point, but I'll show you how it's gonna look. That part is gonna go attach here. So I need to start cutting that part as well so that I can attach a piece of metal, and then this other piece will go on this other side, and then that's what's gonna hold the tube in place. So let me go ahead and start doing that, and I'll show you here in a bit. Okay, so after cutting and sanding and getting everything kind of where it needs to go, I'm using an old fork tube here that I have that is the same diameter as that. This is from an old bike that I had, which I cut because I needed it for something. But I'm using this fork tube to kind of get a sense of where these brackets are gonna go. So I already cut the middle piece, as you can see here, and I'm trying to square it off. Hopefully you can see how it looks here. And I'm trying to square it off on the fork so I can weld these pieces together. And so this is the idea of how it's gonna work. I'm gonna tack these in place here. Once I tack them in place, then I'll know that this bracket is going to fit on the fork because it's currently aligned on the fork. So that means that once I slide it into the bike, it should work on the other brake drum. Now, one of the things that I do want to kind of point out here is that once I weld this here, right now I'm gonna bevel this in and bevel that so I can get a better weld and I can grind it back off. But one of the things I want to point out is that this bracket is actually going to need some bolts. So I'll probably end up putting bolts in here, but I'll do that once the drum brake is off. However, right now what I want to do is I want to just tack it in place, weld it in if I need to, and weld it in from the other side. And then once I do that, I'll have to bevel this area because I just noticed on the brake drum, the corners that are here are actually convex, right? Is that right? Yeah, they're convex. So this corner I'm gonna have to get rid of, but I'll do that once it's all welded. For right now, I just wanna make sure that they align properly and that they're squared off. So that way I can go ahead and lay some tacks here and get that welded. All right, everyone, so we got our bracket done, and I mean, it's rough right now, as you can see. I don't know if you can see this, but it's just a rough bracket. Right now I'm gonna go ahead and clean it up. It has a lot of weld spatter and things like that, but it's basically just a little bracket that's gonna go inside of the brake drum, and that's what's gonna hold the brake drum from moving within the forks. Now, it had to be this size. This was the size that my bike was calling for. So, I mean, I was able to weld inside and on the outside and get that flat. But right now, it's all about cleaning it up, sanding it, and then maybe painting it, making sure that the welds are all good and they penetrated all the way through. And we'll go from there. But for now, I'm happy with this. I just need to drill the holes in the middle. But before we do that, I have to make sure that I take off the brake drum so that we know that it's gonna fit exactly. Of course, there might be some trimming that we need to do to this bracket, but that's fine. So for now, let me go ahead and take off the brake drum and I'll show you how it's gonna fit on there. Okay, so I got the drum brake off. So now I wanna show you what I mean. So this is the brake drum. Now, here in this little slot right here, this is where the forks should kind of sit in here, and then the axle will kind of hold the forks here, and then this should keep it from going back and forth. Now, I had a bolt that was running, I don't know if you can see here, but the bolt was actually rubbing up against this section here and was causing some damage. So this bracket that I made, this is the bracket that is gonna sit right here. We're gonna attach that permanently to the brake drum, and as you can see, it fits in pretty well there. We're gonna attach this to the brake drum, but before I do that, I'm gonna clean it up a little bit here. I'm gonna make sure that it's welded correctly, and then I need to figure out where I'm gonna drill the hole. As you can see, inside it has you know, the brake pads, so I need to find out where exactly I need to drill that hole, which I think is gonna be right around here. so that I can send the hole through here and then be able to put a nut through there. So I might need to remove the brake pads, I'm not too sure, but that's the next step. But for now, I'm happy with the bracket. It does fit in here to hold the fork in place, and I just need to clean it up and file the marks and give it a little bit of a paint job there, and we should be good to go. Now this I was thinking of putting 2 bolts, but judging by the amount of space that we have back here, I'll probably just be able to get 1 bolt in there, but that's fine. Once I do that, I might have to take off the brake pads here. Once I take off the brake pads, then I'll be able to drill a hole through the back and then figure out where that lands in the front. I might have to countersink the bolt that I'm using, but I bought some flathead Allen bolts like this, so I might be able to do that on the bracket. Once I do it on the bracket, it should allow me to put one of these bolts there so it can hold the bracket in place, and then we should be okay. But yeah, that's the idea. So let me start working on this, getting it sanded, and I'll check back with you guys. I'm finished with the bracket. As you can see here, it came out pretty sweet, and it's gonna bolt right up to the drum brake. For now, I need to paint it, or I need to protect it with something. So I didn't want to just spray paint it, because this is metal and it's gonna be hitting aluminum. So I'm kind of afraid that it might scratch the paint of the aluminum. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna apply another material, which is this right here. I had some Raptor liner laying around, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply that to this little piece. Now I'm not going to spray like I did on my last project. I'm just going to use a small Q-tip and just kind of dab it on the piece and see what happens. All right, everyone, so I've gone ahead and let our bracket dry overnight. It came out pretty good. The part that's gonna hit the forks is actually nice and coated. It does feel a little bit rubbery, but hard at the same time. So the part that I didn't quite like is the back. Hopefully you can see this, but I went a little heavy on it, and it has a lot more texture. I don't think that'll be an issue, because I'm gonna use a bolt on this on the drum, so hopefully it'll be okay. Otherwise, I can always come back and grind it off and just paint it. But overall, the bracket came out pretty good. So the next step is to put it on the brake drum. So let me show you how to do that now. Okay, so hopefully y'all can see this. Here we have our brake drum. This is the hole that I've made in order to be able to set the bracket in here. As you can see, this is the bracket that we made. That bracket is gonna go here, and then the bolt is gonna go through there. On the back side of this brake drum, there is a hole, and that's where we're gonna put our locking nut. I bought a locking nut that's gonna go back here. That should be enough. There isn't any pressure that kind of this bolt will really have, other than just keeping the bracket in place from, you know, coming out at one point. But all the pressure is contained within these walls right here. So there really isn't, this bolt is not doing much. It's simply just keeping the bracket from moving. Once we apply the brake, then the fork is going to be here, and that fork is going to be snug in between these brackets. So it's going to act as a stopping force. So it's really not, that bolt is really not going to do much. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to set it in here. I did kind of bevel the bolt and did a flush mount there so that I can tighten it up, and it'll look kind of like this. So I think it came out pretty good. I'm going to add the nut in the back, tighten it up, and then we'll try it on the bike. All right, so it's time to install the brake drum on the bike. Again, I had installed this old rim that I have that has a seam axle just to kind of hold the bike in place in case it fell. I'm gonna go ahead and remove it now so I can go ahead and install our brake drum that we built with the bracket that we built so that we can put the old wheel back on, the wheel that it originally has, or the one that I put on here. So let's go ahead and do that. All right, so hopefully y'all can see, I got the bike up on some stands, which look like they're gonna fall, but as you can see, the tire's spinning freely. Right now, I still need to attach the brake drum mechanism here. So if you just press it slightly, that's when the wheel spins freely. As you can see, my bracket, my bracket is in there. It's kind of squishing in between the fork tube and the brake drum, which is what I wanted. It's in there, it's permanent, it's attached to the brake drum. And yeah, all I need to do is add my lock here, attach my brake drum completely to the brake, and we're good to go. So yeah, it worked out pretty good. The drum is in place, it's not moving at all, which is good, but yet the wheel still spins freely. Again, it's just, there we go. Just need to apply some pressure to the brake drum lever so that way it can spin freely. Otherwise you let it go, it stops, but that's fine. But yeah, the wheel spins freely and the brake works and the drum is in place. It's not going anywhere. So yeah, I would call that a success. All right, everyone, so that was quite a bit of a long video, I would say, for you know, for a small little bracket. However, I want to thank y'all for sticking around to the end of this video. I'm going to test out the brake drum, see hopefully if it works fine. I really want to make sure that it's working properly once I test the bike out on the road. But for now, I can see that the brake drum is staying in place along with those fork tubes, and they're nice and it's nice and squeezed in there, that little bracket that we made. So right now it seems to be working. I'll test it out and I'll let you all know how it works in the future. But for now, I just want to thank you all so much for watching this video, sticking around to the end. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. It really helps a lot. And I'll see you guys on the next video.